jump. Woo! I'm Rachel Nichols. Our insider Brian Windhorst is here. And yes, former Grizzlies and Knicks head coach David Fizdale back on set with us.
Thanks for having me.
We are thrilled to have you.
Happy to be here.
I love your greatest hits playing there. There will be more sitting at this desk. He is not afraid to speak his mind. And I'm thrilled to have you here anytime, but particularly as we honor Dr. Martin Luther King today.
Absolutely.
You have taken many players to the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, and you've also written very eloquently on Dr. King, what he did for America, but also how much of his work is still yet to be done.
Yeah, I just think that we can never forget what he was trying to accomplish and what he was trying to get done, especially in today's times. I think his voice is still speaking to us from the grave.
Absolutely. That message needs to continue. Coming up, we will look back at Fizz's tenure in New York City. Oh, yes, and how we got to where we are today. You're not going to want to miss that. First, though, today is the deadline, people. The last day the NBA will let fans, media, players vote for who should start in the All-Star game. You have up until 11:59 Eastern time tonight. After that, your ballot turns back into a pumpkin. So where are we? Well, here are the latest fan returns. Remember, you get 3 front court players, 2 guards from each conference. So in the West, it's LeBron, AD, and Kawhi, with Paul George and Nikola Jokic on the outside right now looking in. And at guard, Luka and James Harden with Dame Lillard and, yep, the Lakers' Alex Caruso knocking on the door there. In the East, the fans picked Giannis, Pascal Siakam, and Joel Embiid up front, with Jimmy Butler and Jason Tatum still trying to elbow their way in there. And at guard, Trae Young and Kyrie Irving, with Kemba Walker and Derrick Rose still trying to get in. Now, before you get all up in arms about any of these names, complaining that it's just a popularity contest, remember 2 things. Number 1, this literally is a popularity contest, which is okay because All-Star isn't all NBA. It's not MVP or Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah, we want to select the best players, but within that, there should be a little extra weight on who thrills and entertains the most, because that is what All-Star is actually supposed to celebrate. And then number 2, don't get all crazy about the fan vote because only counts for 50%. That change was made a few years ago when internet voting flooded the ballot box and Zaza Pachulia was nearly named an All-Star starter. So now, fans get 50%, the media gets a 25% say, and the players have their own vote for a 25% say as well. Which sounds good, although the players also don't have the best track record. Some don't vote at all, some vote for their friends. Last year, Kevin Love got votes despite having played in just 4 games. Ben Moore also got a vote, and if you're saying who, it's because he's a two-way player who has never scored a single point in his NBA career. Still, overall, I am good with the 50%, 25%, 25% split. It keeps any group of us from being too dangerous. My problem is the front court, back court designations. Paul George, listed as a forward on your ballot, even though the Clippers have listed him at guard the majority of the times that he has been in the starting lineup. Jimmy Butler can only be a forward on your All-Star ballot, which means he probably won't make the cut as a starter this year. That is a little bit insane considering he is the unquestioned engine of a Miami team that's number 2 in the East, and also considering what he actually does on the basketball court. You cannot tell me he does less than those traditional guard type things than, say, Ben Simmons, who is listed at that position, or Jaylen Brown. And oh, by the way, there's LeBron. You know, the guy who takes the ball up the court for the Lakers and leads the league in assists. You can't vote for him at point guard, though, because, yeah, I actually don't know why. In this era of the NBA, positions are at best blurry and often just non-existent. All-Star voting needs to catch up so that when the All-Star game tips off and there's that great panning camera shot of what's supposed to be the 10 biggest stars of the league on the same court, you actually get the 10 biggest stars. That's the goal here, and it shouldn't require a fairy godmother for it to happen. Coach Fizz, if you were the king of all things, there was no 50-20-25 split. It was just about David Fizdale's choices. Give me your All-Star starters.
All right, so they got it right. The fans got it right on the West.
Okay.
I think Harden, Luka Doncic, Kawhi, Bron, AD. I think that's the starting lineup out West. But I agree with you. Jimmy Butler is a starter in the East All-Star game. He's listed at the wrong position. He should be the starting 2 guard on the East. And then to me, I think it's between Ben Simmons and Kemba Walker as the point guard. But the other 3 guys, absolutely. Antetokounmpo, Siakam, and Embiid, they all deserve to be starters. But again, I think Jimmy Butler is the one that's being left out of this.
So you can't put him where you'd want to put him, so you put Kemba Walker and Ben Simmons in your 2 guards.
He basically just violated the rules. by changing the game.
Well, no, he put in it by the
But
rules.
it'll
but
be
he's saying that
Kemba
he
and
would
Ben
like.
Simmons under the certain
Yeah.
rules. But I just think that there's just no way Jimmy Butler shouldn't be starting. You're the number 2 team in the East. You're the catalyst of the team. You're a two-way player. You know, to get that young team to where they are and him being the leader, he should be the starter in the East.
So could you knock one of the forward starters on your list there out for Jimmy?
I can't, because those other guys, they really deserve it, and that's their position.
Right.
And so I just think it's fair to them that they get to be listed at their position. I just feel like Jimmy Butler is a 2 guard in our league, and he should be listed as a 2.
Yeah, technically, Duncan Robinson is listed as the Heat's starting shooting guard, which, if you watch them, it's not really true. He plays small forward, but it's sort of a gray area. To me, Rachel, the only place where this was tough in the media vote was that East guard, because
Right.
you can't put Jimmy. So the difficulty is, who do you give the 2 guard spots to? As Coach Fizz was just talking, I'm going to go with Kemba in one. I went with Bradley Beal as the other one, but I'm going to be honest with you. You could make a case for Malcolm Brogdon. You could make a case for Ben Simmons. You could make a case for Trae Young. You could make a case for a lot of different players there.
You're going to get heat for Bradley Beal. You know what people are going to say to you.
He didn't
He
play
doesn't
enough
play
games.
on a winning team.
He
He
doesn't
doesn't play
in
enough
winning
games.
Well, anybody who wants to bring Ben Simmons to me, I'm not going to argue with them. Say, okay, it's fine. You can go with Ben Simmons. I went with Bradley Beal because he's averaging the highest amount of points and assists in his career, and he's having a great season. And I think he's shown good leadership. Now, he expressed a little bit of frustration over the weekend about the Wizards situation after I made my vote, but I felt that he's shown good leadership
This
with
is
that
why
team.
you need to be like me and vote at 11:58 p.m.
Yes, she
That
boards
is-
the plane right as the door is closing. It's extremely
That is,
annoying.
that is my MO all the way through. The Jimmy Butler thing is interesting only in that the league will tell you, to your point, the Heat list him at forward, and they do. But that is really about the other 4 players that they think should be starting, and they got to put some guys somewhere. So Jimmy slots into that forward spot on the lineup, but he plays as a shooting guard, and we all know it. And by the way, they're listing Paul George as a forward. And the Clippers, there's a slip. The Clippers don't do that. So you can't sit here and say, well, the Heat are listing him as a forward. We can't list him
Well,
as a
hey,
guard
Ben Simmons
when
and
they've got Paul George not in the position.
Ben
his team
Simmons
is
and
listing him
LeBron
at.
essentially played the same way. LeBron's
Exactly.
listed as a
Right.
forward. I mean, when David was in Miami and I was covering the Heat, Spo used to call
Positionless
LeBron,
basketball.
That's what it is.
1 through 5. That's what
Yeah,
he used to
Right?
call him.
1 through 5, and you know, a lot of times you're looking at LeBron now. He's at an all-time high in touches, and it's because he plays point guard.
Yes.
And right now he's listed as a forward
Just
in this whole deal.
Sticking to those kinds of positions, I just think that guys should be available at multiple spots.
Our league is not a position league anymore. I don't care how you slice it. You know, you got 7-footers bringing the ball up the court now. You know, and it's just, you can't just label a guy and put a guy in the box like you used to. I mean, this kid Luka Doncic, he's a point guard. I don't care how you slice it.
Right, and he's listed as point guard, but his size in previous
would be a
eras
small
of the
forward.
NBA, he would be a forward.
No
so,
doubt about it.
Look, I think all NBA needs to change as well. When you're talking about stuff like this, where we want the 10 best guys on the court to start,
Yes.
and that opening shot, you just want that playground fantasy of all these guys playing together. It should be the 10 biggest stars. That's who it should be. And again, all-star stars. Later in the year, we'll do who has the technically best statistics and analytics and all the things that we do. This is about razzle dazzle because that is a huge part of what makes the NBA popular.
Absolutely.
Is stars. We should be celebrating those guys at this time of year. Now we also have the All-Star Reserves, which is made up of stars as well because these are such good players through and through. You have voted for All-Star Reserves as an NBA coach. It drives some of the rest of us crazy. Who you guys pick? How do you guys pick who you pick?
I always look at winning first. I think winning is a big part of team, and a lot of times those reserve guys are the glue to why a team wins. Then I get into the statistics behind that. But then I do give some credence to those guys who are putting up huge numbers, even if their team isn't necessarily a team that's in the playoff race. But I try to keep it in that pecking order. I just think winning is important. It should be notified and noticed that a guy is helping his team win. And, you know, those guys work their butts off to be recognized. A lot of times they don't get the praise of the stars, but I do think that those guys should be acknowledged.
Yeah, you know, a lot of things become public in today's NBA. There's a lot of leaking. We never find out the coaches' ballots. We never find it out. The only ways we typically find out who the closest missed is usually when there's an injury replacement, the commissioner gives the guy who had the next most votes. Otherwise,
right.
we never find out. They do a great job of keeping that quiet. There's a reason coaches don't want to give opposing players reason.
Yeah, I don't want to give any guy ammunition to be trying to go at my team when he plays against me because he thought I snubbed him.
But the
or
one thing
something like
you really notice, coaches typically don't reward rookies and young players, which will be interesting with Trae Young if he doesn't get the vote
Fan
in.
vote isn't enough
As you
to carry
mentioned,
him.
very good numbers. Will they reward a guy who's regarded as one of the worst defenders on one of the worst teams in the league? That'll be an interesting.
He's not regarded as one of the worst defenders. The numbers are the numbers.
Right.
He is in the bottom 5 of all NBA players.
Bottom 3, I believe.
And again, that's why I said winning is my number one thing I look at. And a lot
Okay,
of
but my
times a
bone
young
to
guy
pick-
on a tough a team that's not necessarily winning, they get the snub sometimes because of that.
Well, that's my bone to pick with you guys. Yes, I understand that a great player should help his team win. And again, you can go back to the Jimmy Butler example. Eric Spoelstra just made this point down in Miami. He said, look, his box score numbers might not be up with some of these other superstars in the league, but he does more to help our team win than,
Right.
you know, he does as much as anyone in the league to help our team win. I get that aspect, but when you're talking about a Ja Morant, a Trae Young, I wouldn't hold either of those guys responsible for whether their team has a winning record or not. Those are franchises that got those players because they had such a big turnaround that they needed to make. The rest of the roster needs to make a turnaround. And I do think there's an argument when picking the reserves. Again, it's the All-Star game. It
Well,
is
don't-
about the
they-
flash and
They got
dazzle.
a young guys game, right? That they still play.
The Rising Stars game, but come on.
They can go hang out over there for All-Star weekend.
He is completely on brand for NBA coaches.
He is. I would like everyone. Okay, anyway.
Typical coach.
I'm telling you. Coming up, we're going to talk about Kyle Kuzma. He stepped up again Saturday for the Lakers in their win over Houston. But with AD coming back tonight, yes, Anthony Davis is returning. What should the Lakers do with Kuz? First, before we get to that, though, it's time for our distant replay. That's this date in 2005. Josh Smith making distant today.
He leaks out, throws it up.
I think I was in Atlanta then.
That's a highlight special.
You see yourself on the side? That's really what we got to know.
I'm absolutely sure I was assistant coach of that team.
He could really get up.
Woo.
He's still getting checks from the Pistons. so.